Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Hitman Agent 47. I have actually not ever played the Hitman video game, which this movie is based on, and I have not seen the first Hitman film, of which this is a reboot of. So, in a way, I'm the perfect person to review this film on its own merits, regardless of previous media that existed before. And regardless of all that, this is a huge pile of shit. This is one of the worst action movies I've seen this year. Taken 3 angers me a lot more, but this is way worse, actually. The action sequences are worse. The movie itself is far more boring. It's one of the worst action movies to be released video on demand, theatrically. It is one of the worst movies of the year, and there's really nothing redeeming about it. I've talked before about how video game movies needed to be directed by someone who cares about video games. Well, before we even get to that, and frankly, we don't even need to talk about that, because instead, I'd much rather talk about like movies need to be directed by people who kind of care about actually making good movies. It didn't even reach that level. Then, yeah, it should probably be directed by someone who gives a shit about video games, but this film didn't even get past the part where it became a decent movie. It is such a horrible action movie. It's so inept at what it's doing, and it's so boring. I actually thought a lot of the actors who are speaking English in this movie actually were only speaking English phonetically and didn't actually know how to speak English because their delivery was so awful. It is such a horrendously bad action movie. It makes me question what Hollywood's even trying to do with action movies this bad. It is not redeemable at all, and honestly, most of the time I was thinking about, like, you know, what should I have for breakfast tomorrow? I mean, I was thinking about having a bagel, and an action sequence was going on. I was not thrilled by this movie. Hitman Agent 47. I've said before how things wash over you. This film doesn't wash over you. It just kind of happens in the background because my brain started thinking about other things so I could somehow deal with the atrocity I was seeing that they called somewhat of an action movie. This girl whose dad invented this Hitman project, and it's genetically engineered people who don't feel and stuff and can kill people easier and be the perfect weapons, and his daughter who he genetically messed with so she had enhanced survival skills, which makes her really hard to get along with people and won't let anyone touch her. He has been in hiding for years and years and years, and she's trying to find him, and the hitman's trying to kill her or get her or something. And then Zachary Quinto comes up and he's gonna find her and make her find out where her father is, and kind of gets her to realize where it is in Singapore. And then they go there and stuff happens, and they try to stop the Hitman experiments from continuing or starting up again from the man who created them, so no one else can start that up and create other Hitman, even though the Hitman himself is against that. But I guess he's kind of self-aware or something, so that they can't go on and hurt more people or something. This movie doesn't know. How am I supposed to? I don't know what it was about. I'm supposed to explain it. The movie can't explain it. I read a lot of things about this, and a lot of people said it's kind of direct video quality. And I think there is kind of a problem with what Hollywood's doing now, especially with genre picks, in that there are much better genre picks on demand and smaller genre picks that you can get on Amazon, or that you probably spend about $7 for in their new releases. And then for me to go to the theater and spend almost double or more than double that in New York and see a movie that's about a tenth the quality of even those is kind of insulting. And it kind of makes me think, like, why did I have to see Skin Trade with Dolph Lundgren at home? Why couldn't I have seen that in the theater? That was a much better action movie and much more apt at being an action movie. This doesn't really work as an action film. It does have the typical problem that I keep complaining about, of all the action sequences being cut up to shit. You really cannot tell what's going on sometimes. Not as bad as what happened in Taken 3, but certainly pretty awful. It doesn't have any great action sequences to make it worth seeing. Even video on demand action movies or direct to DVD or whatever they are, action films have a really cool scene that's shot really well that make it worth it. And even if it's just you're seeing it for that stupid silly reason to see someone's head explode. And any of the violent scenes weren't done very well. It just seemed to be the thing that they were really good at, was making this guy look good in a suit, which it honestly looks a lot more like cosplay than what Timothy Oliphant elephant, I don't know, wore in the first one, which I didn't see the first one, but from pictures and trailers I saw of the first one, he looked a lot better. It's the kind of action movie that doesn't get like, just because somebody looks cool doesn't mean that I'm gonna think they're badass. Like, do they understand that, like, I think Bruce Lee's badass because I saw him do all this crazy shit, and if I don't see them do it, it's like a plot element that you screwed up through your filmmaking. Part of filmmaking, especially when you're making a Hollywood film that's, you know, telling a story, is storytelling. And if you mess up that part where you're supposed to show how badass the hitman is and it's not there, I'm just like, so this guy looks cool with suits and you made your editor make this sequence and miss lunch and work all afternoon to keep making these shitty action sequences for no reason. It is so bad at what it's doing. This is also written by Skip Woods, who has the distinction of writing two of my least favorite movies possibly ever, probably ever, definitely ever. He did A Good Day to Die Hard, which is probably the worst film I've ever reviewed. It's definitely the worst Hollywood film I've ever reviewed, so I'll give it that, I guess, you know, because Food Fight was probably worse. And he also did X-Men Origins Wolverine. Supposedly he wrote the Hitman video game, which, as I have not played it, does not speak very highly of the Hitman video game, because, like, wow, he's written some real shit, and movies that don't really know what kind of movie it is as the movie goes on. It's like they're all cut up and messed up like Fantastic Four, except without the good parts that could have maybe been something. It's just like shitty parts that become even shittier into shittier action movies. It's like watching a bunch of bad action movies mate together and make this weird mutation that's something out of a Rick and Morty episode that's referencing David Cronenberg. Skip Woods should really not allowed to write scripts at all, ever have any association with filmmaking or storytelling, because the movies he's put out are so horrible. It is astronomically bad, like how bad his movies are. I don't think anyone was particularly good in this movie. Zachary Quinto is the only one who really gives a shit, but it's really him half trying himself. But I actually semi kind of liked him. It was really because I was probably going through a really difficult period, and that difficult period was watching this movie, and I needed something to latch onto to get me through, and his performance, I guess, sort of did. But then when I came out, I realized the Stockholm Syndrome that this movie put me in, and how horrific I was treated by this film, and the awful cut up energy that this film really put me through. I'm really glad I came out the other end of it, because wow, this is the bottom of the barrel in terms of Hollywood filmmaking. This is a bad action movie. There's nothing good about this movie. It's awful. Apparently some of the action sequences were done by the guys who made John Wick. John Wick is an amazing film. I don't know how the editors and the director of this film made this so awful. John Wick is one of my favorite action movies to come out recently. If this was made like John Wick, I would love this movie. And I kind of wanted just a cheapo B action film. And the premise, a genetically modified assassin, like, come on, that sounds like an awesome B movie. But you have a really inept lead character played by Robert Friend, who is not a friend of me. He honestly feels like someone playing a character or cosplaying in a video. He's like doing a part. You never really believe him as a badass, partly because we never see him do any of that stuff. He just like looks cool. There's a certain point where you see people ripping off John Woo and you wish you could see John Woo. Honestly, I wish I was watching Fourth Generation rip off John Woo rather than this bullshit. This is a bad action movie. I do not like Hitman Agent 47. If you have any sense of a brain, you would not like this movie. This is a horribly boring film. It's one of the most boring action movies, and I'm supposed to go, whoa, wasn't that awesome? I didn't think, whoa, that was awesome. I thought, whoa, the credits are on, I need to get the fuck out. And then it had a mid-credit sequence, and I kind of turned around and thought, maybe I should go back. No, fuck this. And I walked out, and I still felt a little bad. It was like Stockholm Syndrome. Any part of this movie you like is just to deal with sitting through this horrible movie. I don't like this movie in the least. If there was any justice in the world about action movies, this would go on demand, and cool stuff would get to be put in the theater. This is a bad time of year. I would much rather sit through something that was a little ambitious and different rather than a studio trying to reboot a franchise and do it incredibly poorly. This is such a forgettable, horrible video game movie, but it's also probably one of the most horrible action movies I've seen this year. It is an action movie that doesn't want to be an action movie. It's not even good at being a low-level B action movie. It fails at being the bottom of the barrel. Somehow it's below the barrel, and it's that weird fungus mold shit that will like get you a weird disease. That is Hitman Agent 47. Stay away from this movie. It is not fun. It is not funny. It'll just make you feel sad that you've wasted part of your life to see this film, and you probably could have spent it with loved ones or doing something productive, but instead you saw action sequences that weren't action sequences. You saw actors who really weren't even trying, and you saw a director who's wasting a pretty cool B action movie setup. It is overall just a complete failure of Hollywood filmmaking and B action filmmaking to make a movie that you wish someone would take out into the alley and put out of its misery so no one has to see it again. So if you have seen Hitman Agent 47 and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.